in the order in which you said you might have a case, what I'd like to do is call on, and if you can just give us a short couple of sentences about what the case is about, so that the participants have kind of an understanding about what you might bring, and then we can all as a group decide which one makes sense to start off with. And if it's a short one, then we might have time for two, but I don't want to be too optimistic here. So we'll see how we go. So would you like to share first, please?
Sure. So I'm working with a client in the healthcare industry, and she's in the space of organizational diversity and inclusion. It's a new role for her, and she comes from a background of being, before she came into, working with organizations in the HR department. I noticed a couple of things in her, noticed them pretty early, around perfection and wanting attention. She's got excellent project management skills, excellent presence, and the group, the HR vice president, obviously thought she had something to her, which is why she got a promotion, and that's when I entered the picture. I'm almost done with my engagement with her, and am involved in the last series of stakeholder interviews to see what kind of progress she's made. And what is coming up is that her perception of the progress she's made is much more than what I'm picking up from the people around her, from her stakeholders. So my question really is, as a coach, I see a lot of progress as well, but my question is, what am I missing?
Okay.
And how can I, end this engagement so that I leave her with something valuable?
Great. So really unpicking sort of how do you do an ending with the client and ensure that it's kind of wrapped up.
Right. And I understand that, these things don't come to an end in 6 months or 7 months. But if I can leave her with some thoughts on her progress moving forward.
Okay.
What that might look like. Thank you.
Thank you. That sounds like a very interesting case for us to unpick potentially. What about for you?
Okay. The case I have is actually a coaching that ended before the official planned end. So the coachee decided to stop the coaching. The main thing, the lady I'm coaching is working in HR, working in a big multinational company. She is Spanish, works in Germany. She's very fluent in German, so there's no language issues, and it's a multinational, really multinational organization, and also the teams she's operating in are actually multinational. So she's not just focused on the German side of the organization. She's looking at France, Germany, Spain, England, and God knows where else in part of that one. And her challenge was that getting on with her team, where she has low performers, and working effectively in teams where she considers performance not at the best, and not kind of being erratic in her response and the feedback, when she considered that people are actually not pulling their weight in the team. And we had we made some progress initially, and then she came back and said, you know what, I don't think we're making any progress. At least that's what she came back, and then I had a very different session with her, and she felt exhausted at the end of the session. And after that, we had a conversation over the phone. She called me and said, this is too energy consuming for me. I want to stop. I don't want to invest in my personal development right now. I'm too tired.
And so what would you be wanting as a result of the supervision?
Well, maybe some ideas, some impulses, and what could have done differently. Because I think she would make even more progress when I changed the style. So what could have been under my influence to keep going or keep the coaching engagement continuing? I'm convinced that she's missing an opportunity, but that's a fact that maybe I'm in the same trap as she was before.
Yeah, maybe. Thank you very much. That sounds very complete as well.
Well, it was interesting to me as I filled in the prep form. There were a couple of things bubbling around, really.
Great.
One is around the how to best offer practices or tools that I feel will be helpful for my clients without sort of directing them or telling them, or this is what you should do. So how to do that in a more natural way is one issue. And the second is relating to a current coaching relationship where I'm struggling to get the final feedback form from a client. So I would be happy to work with whichever one is most helpful for anybody else.
Yeah.
Well, mine was quite a simple one, really. It was about when the client comes to a call and they don't know what to talk about.
That's a real dilemma, isn't it?
Yeah, and I've had that myself when I've been a client. I might have an agreement, an overarching agreement of where I want to focus and what I want to achieve, but I may come to a call kind of thinking, what's next? Or a client might come along and just not know where to start on a particular day. And I thought, it brings up how much do you coach them around that? And you know what I mean? It's like, how do you approach that in a way that best serves the client, that is the most helpful and constructive and empowering for the client, where they're able to use the time well? Because my concern is always that I want them to get value from the coaching and get the results they want. And how do you step into that space with them when they're kind of not quite sure where they want to go on that day in that session?
Absolutely. Yeah, a common dilemma for people, and it's a really, thank you so much for bringing that one forward, because that really sparks my mind about sort of the difference between peer and professional coaching. Is that sort of issue in a peer environment, in a peer supervision environment, is actually really a great one, because people can bring all of their knowledge, all of their experience, their, what has worked for me in the past. And oftentimes it has sort of that, maybe a bit of an advice giving sort of a flavor to it. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Absolutely brilliant stuff. And if I were going to be working with that as a professional supervisor, I'm going to start looking at sort of, what are you doing to prepare the client for that session? What's happening in the field? Is there any transference and countertransference going on? Where are you at your level of experience as a coach? How do you ask some questions, maybe in some contracting sort of a style, to get the client a bit more engaged in the arrangement, etc. And I think that that's a really great sort of way of looking at something really simple that is very different in the way you approach it. So I'm not suggesting to the group that we necessarily choose that one by any means, but I just wanted to use that as an example, because I did want to talk about sort of the difference between peer mentoring, peer supervision versus a professional kind of a frame, because it might feel a little bit different today for those of you, if you have done peer work before in working in a professional kind of a space. So we've got 3 separate areas that we would like to hear from potentially, and what I'm going to do is go around the group, and I'd like you to let me know which one you would like to hear, and whichever one is the one that gets the most votes, so to speak, is the one that we'll start off with.